Dazai was a depressed bum who just wanted to spend eternity with his wife. However, everything changes when he forcefully gets yeeted to another world with overpowered abilities, but he uses them to crack anyone who stands in the way of him reuniting with his wife. The story begins with Dazai and his girlfriend, Sashin, trying to unalive themselves because they are tired of joining you losers in the life race. As they tie their hands together with a ribbon to symbolize their love in the hope of drowning in a river, Truck-kun gets jealous and runs them over first. When Dazai wakes, he finds himself in a church and wonders if he is in the afterlife. Just then, a priestess named Annette approaches him and informs him that he has been sent to another world to become a hero. Disappointed, he immediately overdoses on cheap pills to avoid the mission, but Annette uses a detoxifying spell to save him. The moment he wakes up, he wastes no time in telling Annette about how unhappy he is with her unwanted charity. But Annette refuses to listen to him and tries to explain the importance of being a hero, even though he just wants her to shut her annoying voice. Annette then decides to show him his new superhuman stats to convince him that he is needed in their world, only to realize that he's weaker than Homelander without V. Thinking the system might be glitching, she checks the special skills he may possess, only to realize that the idiot has a skill that spreads poison in his body when he is attacked. Dazai excuses himself to look for other ways to die, but Annette asks him to stay at the church because the monsters in her world are just going to turn him into dinner. Determined to die, he refuses her offer and proceeds to leave while Annette becomes intrigued by his personality. Unlike the usual idiots who have been transported to her world, Dazai is completely different, causing her to fall for his emo riz. Outside the church, Dazai suddenly sees a hot chick named Tama being held hostage by a death tree. She calls on him to help her out, but the foolish guy is more intrigued by how she is struggling to die and asks if he can write a novel about her. She angrily orders him to save her already, so he stretches out his hands to the giant tree to show her that he is useless. To make matters worse, the giant tree captures him, so Tama lets him know that the tree will suck their life force until they die. Hearing that, Dazai becomes delighted as the tree starts draining his life force, but soon enough, it withers away due to Dazai's poison skill, leaving Dazai disappointed. However, Tama is just glad she did not die and thanks him, after which she invites him to her place. As she grabs his hand, Dazai notices that he is still wearing the ribbon he used with Sashan. This gives him hope that his lover is also in this world, so he ignores Tama and proceeds to look for Sachan, much to Tama's frustration. To begin his search, he returns to the church to make enquiries from a now smitten Annette, who becomes disappointed thinking he's already rizzed up Tama. He then asks Annette if she knows where he can find a chick named Sashan, which only makes Annette more furious that he has yet another chick in his life. A few hours later, Annette and Tama start to argue about who knows Dazai better on their way to find Sashan, but Dazai just settles in a coffin with the hope that the chicks will pull him to the nearest city. Annette and Tama begin to drag Dazai's coffin to the nearest city until Tama finally loses it and lashes out at him for letting them do all the heavy lifting. Receiving no response, Annette quickly checks his superhuman stats and confirms that he is alive, and bro is literally just resting in peace. Getting to the city, Dazai finally comes out of his coffin to check out the city's busy street. Annette suggests they stop at the city's castle to have an audience with the king, and he complies. Inside the castle, King Thomas and his daughter Princess Charlotte welcome them warmly and suggest they rest at the castle's bedchambers under the condition that they give Thomas a gist about their travels. Dazai offers to tell Thomas about what it feels like to actually sleep in a coffin, but the comment only terrifies the old king, who is already close to meeting his ancestor. Annette quickly steps in to defuse the tense situation by praising Charlotte's beauty, and this leaves Thomas in high spirits. Thomas then talks about how his precious daughter is getting married soon and orders his guards to bring in the two suitors he has specifically arranged for her. Moments later, a knight and a musician walk in, and Thomas introduces the knight as Gomez, while the skinny musician's name is Otto. Thomas also explains how the influence of the Dark Lord, the nation's enemy, has increased monsters' activity in the city, and since he is getting old, he would love to let Charlotte marry either of the two guys so they can be the next king and defend the city. Since Charlotte is indecisive, Thomas asks Dazai and the other members of the group to choose a guy for Charlotte. Dazai just replies that it is foolish of him to ask travelers he just met about something that will determine his daughter's future and accuses him of being unfit to be a king. Immediately, Annette and Tama start apologizing for his rudeness to avoid being cooked, explaining that he is from the other world, while Charlotte just stares at Dazai with interest as he casually takes his leave. A few hours later, Dazai sits in the bedchamber allocated to him and the others to rest in. Annette notices that he cannot sleep and uses the opportunity to ask about Sachan. But before he can reply, she suddenly notices Tama's tail sticking up from underneath Dazai's bedspread. Immediately suspecting the worst, she angrily yanks the cover off only to find Tama sleeping peacefully on Dazai's thigh as if nothing is wrong. Annette then starts to lash out at Tama for trying to get a taste of Dazai's sausage, which leads the two to actively start trading insults at each other while Dazai just quietly excuses himself from the room because he does not like stress. Shortly after, he runs into Charlotte while strolling through the castle, and Charlotte uses the chance to open up to him about who to choose to be her husband. She tells him about how Gomez is one of her father's dependable soldiers, while Otto is her childhood friend who has spent years writing songs and singing to her, so she is unsure of who to choose. Dazai then advises her to decide on what she wants for herself and not let anyone choose how she lives her life. The following morning, Thomas summons the travelers to inform them that Charlotte has finally chosen who she wants to marry, and she wants the group to act as the witnesses. Charlotte then walks towards Dazai and picks him, stating she would love to die with him. Her decision leaves everyone stunned, and Annette passes out immediately from the shock. Charlotte, however, continues to explain to Dazai that their conversation the previous night made her realize that Otto only sees her as an audience for his whack music, while Gomez smells like he has a beef with the bathroom. Thomas quickly steps forward to tell Charlotte not to act like a fool with her spouse choice, but Charlotte just lashes out at him for not even consulting her before picking suitors, because she does not even wish to get married in the first place. Since Dazai is the only one who asked for her opinion and respected it, she is willing to die with him. Just then, Gomez removes his helmet to distract them and transforms into a bull that visits the gym often. Apparently, he is a servant of the Dark Lord who intended to acquire the city by becoming their king and offering it to the Dark Lord, but since Charlotte thinks he is smelly, he might as well just run the whole city to the ground. The king's guards immediately rush to stop Gomez, hoping to prevent any further chaos, but Gomez clears them out in a single blow. Tama then steps in to face the bull, and Otto suddenly decides that this life-or-death battle is somehow the perfect moment to debut his latest single. Tama hits Gomez with her ultimate cat punch move, but this only makes Gomez see red and injure Tama with his sharp horns. Dazai calmly interrupts their fight soon after and offers that Gomez eliminate him and Charlotte with his magnificent horns since they are both willing to die anyway. Charlotte then starts to contemplate, but Dazai just assures her that their wishes are about to be granted. Gomez rushes towards them, but Charlotte suddenly realizes that life is actually beautiful and blurts out that she wants to live and protect the people of the city. Hearing this, Dazai confirms that she is actually a kind person and pushes her so that Gomez can send only him to the afterlife. Just then, Annette, who has now regained consciousness, casts a shield to protect Dazai from Gomez's crazy horns. With Gomez being distracted, Tama quickly lands a hit on him that sends him outside the castle and straight into the nearest river. After the fight, Thomas apologizes to Charlotte for being selfish and not considering her feelings and begs her to forgive him. Charlotte accepts her father's apology since he is still her father at the end of the day, and the two hug it out. The following day, Charlotte officially begins her duties as queen of the city and immediately orders her guards to deal with a newly reported monster that is currently disrupting the city. In the meantime, Dazai and the others leave the castle to continue their journey, and Annette and Tama talk about Charlotte's bold choice to take over the city at her young age. Dazai, however, tells them not to worry because he trusts that she's going to do a good job. A few hours later, Annette, Tama, and Dazai continue their journey. Along the way, they stop to rest, since they are feeling hungry. As they rest, Annette checks their guide to see how long it will take for them to arrive at their next stop, which is Tama's hometown, and suggests they stop at a church first to make some enquiries on Sachan. Tama agrees to tag along but worries that Arnett may not be allowed into the temple since she left her duty post to follow a guy who does not even care about her. Annette then assures her that everything will be fine because she had a close acquaintance deliver her resignation letter on her behalf. Just then, the so-called acquaintance, who happens to be a pocket-sized bat named Melos, drops on Dazai's head and immediately starts drinking his blood like juice. Annette quickly asks Melos if he sent her resignation letter to the church, only to find out that he did not, and she cusses him out for that. She then starts panicking while Melos casually plays on Dazai's coffin, unbothered by her rants. Shortly after, a dragon suddenly approaches them to scare them off. Before the girls can react, a chick named Waldelia appears and effortlessly tames the beast by casting a spell on the dragon while Annette and Tama just watch in horror. After she is done, Waldelia advises them to exit the area because it is surrounded by monsters, especially since they have a casualty, referring to Dazai's coffin. Dazai then opens the coffin to show that he is alive, and they quickly apologize for his behavior, stating that he is from the other world. Hearing this immediately makes Waldelia see red because she hates people from the other world, and she casts a spell to eliminate him immediately. Annette quickly blocks the spell from hitting him, thereby causing a massive explosion in the area. The explosion leaves the chicks injured, but Waldelia just moves closer to them, clearly not affected by the explosion. Still, Annette and Tama stand to defend Dazai, so Waldelia casts a spell that leaves them immobile. Annette then notices a mark on Waldelia's chest, which makes her figure out that Waldelia may be the Dark Lord. Dazai steps in and tells Waldelia to leave the girls and face him since it is he she wants, so she complies and stabs him before turning to leave. Seeing this causes Annette and Tama to pass out immediately, while Dazai, who survives the attack, stops her to inform her that he can tell she possesses a powerful hatred. He then asks about the source of her hatred, but Waldelia ignores the question and escapes on her dragon while wondering what kind of person Dazai truly is. A few hours later, Isha, a fellow priestess like Annette, opens her temple's door after hearing a knock, only to see Arnett, Tama, and Dazai lying on the floor, unconscious. Immediately, Isha rushes to carry Annette, but Annette weakly tells her to save Dazai instead. 2 days after the incident, they all visit the market for window shopping, and Dazai starts to drink a poison that is supposed to be used on monsters. Tama immediately scolds him for doing something stupid after barely just escaping death, and he admits that he does not like the fact that he is hale and healthy. Isha and Annette watch their display from afar, and Annette uses the chance to thank Isha for saving his miserable life. She also asks if Isha knows about any chick named Sachin, but Isha has no idea who that is. Hearing this leaves her worried, but Isha questions why she is suddenly besties with someone from the other world. Isha admits that Annette has always been too soft-hearted to make a proper priestess, but quitting her job and traveling with someone from the other world is quite a stretch. Isha also reminds her that people from the other world are not decent because the gifts given to them to defeat the Dark Lord are always used for their own selfish interests. Just then, Kotaro, a wannabe 50 Cent, who is also from the other world, interrupts them to give them a sneak peek of his latest single, but Isha just leaves him on read and continues to advise Annette. Refusing to relent, Kotaro tries to impress them by showing that he can mass-produce currencies, and Isha angrily throws his stupid currencies at him, which causes him to run off, promising to get revenge. Isha, however, uses him as an example of how crazy people from the other world are. Annette then tries to defend Dazai by explaining that he is different from the others, but Isha just feels Annette has been brainwashed. She asks about Dazai's abilities, but becomes shocked after learning that he has no powers despite protecting them from the Dark Lord's attack. The real surprise, however, is that the Dark Lord was supposedly defeated a week ago. Getting to their lodge, Annette informs a shocked Tama about the Dark Lord and continues to yap on about how peace has finally come to their world. Though Tama is happy with the news, she wonders who Waldelia truly is then. Dazai soon interrupts their discussion to complain about how he is experiencing writer's block, but when he met Waldelia, he felt a sudden burst of creativity and hopes he meets someone who can make him experience that again very soon. Annette then suggests they go into town, but on getting there, they equip Dazai in heavy silver armor to protect him from any form of attack, though he clearly looks like he is suffering. Shortly after, Isha runs into him and informs him to stop being friends with Annette because she wants to protect her, but he just replies that it is up to Annette to decide who she wants to follow. Annoyed by his reply, she lets him know that she is never going to trust his kind. In the meantime, Suzuki, a hero who is also Kotaro's buddy, arrives at the town square to address the people of the town. Suzuki informs them that he and some other people from the other world have defeated the Dark Lord, and the crowd erupts in celebration, grateful that their greatest ops is finally dead. After that, Kotaro confidently confirms that Suzuki will now rule the town, which leaves the crowd confused, since no one remembers agreeing to such a decision. Tama comments on how ridiculously stupid the information sounds, but this only attracts Kotaro to Annette, who is beside her, and he immediately informs Suzuki that Annette attacked him earlier. Suzuki then moves closer to a scared Annette to avenge his buddy. Suzuki places his hand on Annette's head and casts a spell on her that immediately turns her into his pet, which leaves Kotaro deeply satisfied that things are going in his direction. Tama, however, grabs Kotaro's shirt to tell him off, but Kotaro just brags about how Suzuki's power can turn people he pets into his slaves. Hearing this makes Tama worry for Annette, and she quickly forces Kotaro to undo the spell, but Suzuki just turns Tama into a pet too. Isha then moves forward to scold Suzuki since he is her former student, and she reminds him that no matter what power he has gained, the town will never acknowledge him as their head. Suzuki just smirks in response and vows to destroy the town so he can build a new kingdom for himself, where he can rule without opposition. He then orders his pets to turn the people of the town into food, a command that completely enrages Isha, as she cannot believe how far he has fallen. The pets continue to destroy the town, thereby causing widespread panic as the people scatter in every direction trying to escape the chaos. In the meantime, Tama, who is still under Suzuki's influence, starts attacking Dazai's armor with relentless force, striking it repeatedly until she finally manages to break it before collapsing from exhaustion. Dazai then stuffs her inside the nearest barrel to protect her from the ongoing attack, just as Isha gets thrown like a piece of paper in his direction. Isha informs him that the attack is being caused by someone from the other world like himself, who used to be quiet and weak but is now drunk with his newfound power. Hearing this piques Dazai's interest, and he starts to scribble on his notepad like a reporter chasing a major story because he finds Suzuki interesting. He then learns from Isha that Suzuki is on his way to the church, so he heads there, but Isha insists that she will follow him. Getting to the entrance of the church, Isha suggests they proceed with caution since Annette told her Dazai possesses no skill, making him practically useless. But Dazai just brings out his bottle of poison to drink and opens the door to the church. Inside the church, Dazai introduces himself to Suzuki and informs him of his pleasure in writing a novel about him. He then explains that the novel will focus on how Suzuki gained more power than he deserved and now uses it to satisfy his greed. Suzuki feels deeply insulted by his statement, so he angrily orders his pets to eliminate Dazai. Dazai, however, remains unfazed, but Isha protects Dazai by casting a spell to stop the pets from devouring him. Even at that, the pets remain undefeated, and some of the pets shoot fireballs in his direction. Mellows immediately steps in to launch a counterattack, intercepting the incoming fireballs and sending them back in Suzuki's direction with precise force. Suzuki then orders his strongest pet to turn Dazai to lunch, and even though the pet bites him, it turns pale in seconds because of the poison Dazai possesses, which catches Suzuki completely off guard. Isha immediately orders Suzuki to surrender since they have the upper hand now, but he stubbornly refuses and summons Annette, who is still under his influence as his trump card. He orders Annette to eliminate them instantly, and she complies. But Isha blocks her first attempt. Isha then quickly tells Dazai to let them retreat because she does not want to fight Annette, but Dazai refuses and moves closer to Annette to speak sense into her. Seeing this, Suzuki laughs and informs Dazai that he is only digging his own grave, but Dazai believes it is Annette's decision to determine that and not that of a foul-mouthed coward like him. Dazai then speaks to her, which makes it hard for her to eliminate him. Desperate to maintain control, Suzuki strengthens the spell on Annette, pouring more power into it, but instead of attacking Dazai, she suddenly turns the blade on herself and stabs herself before collapsing into Dazai's arms. Dazai quickly calls on Isha to tend to her, and she complies. As this is going on, Suzuki is still in disbelief from all that went down, so he grabs the knife Annette used to end his life. Dazai quickly stops him without hesitation because he still needs to write a book about him, and he instructs Suzuki to start talking. Turns out that in Suzuki's past life, he used to get bullied a lot. Because of this, he had thought about ending his life multiple times but had lacked the courage to do so. So one day, when returning from work, he was suddenly hit by the truck. Getting to the new world, he is surprised to learn that he has a gift of taming wild animals, an ability that initially seemed like a blessing, but that did not stop the people of the new world from picking on him. Annoyed and emotionally pushed to the edge, he eventually begins to use his skill to cause havoc as a form of retaliation. Fascinated by the story, Dazai starts to read out the manuscript he wrote while Suzuki was explaining himself, which he titles No Longer Heroic. He then announces that Suzuki will be sent back to his normal world, and at that moment, the pages of Dazai's book suddenly form a magic circle around Suzuki. The pages then transform into a teleportation portal that surprises both Annette and Isha, while Suzuki is suddenly sent back to his former world without any chance to resist. Surprised, Isha wonders how Dazai was able to pull such a stunt, and Annette calls her attention to Dazai's current stat, which has now upgraded him to being a skilled writer. Since people from Dazai's world are not supposed to possess such special abilities, Isha begins to seriously wonder if he was summoned to their world specifically to oppose his own kind, but Dazai just lies on the floor, oblivious to the fact that he just sent Suzuki back to his former world. Around the town, Suzuki's pets also start retreating from attacking the people, as if the command controlling them has finally been cut off, causing the chaos to gradually settle. In the meantime, Tama finally regains consciousness and immediately becomes angry upon realizing she was stuffed inside a barrel, complaining loudly about how humiliating the situation is. The following morning, Isha informs Annette, who is about to continue her journey with the others, that Dazai may have an important role to play in their world, so she must always support him even if the journey ahead gets dangerous or unpredictable. The following week, Isha arrives at her church's headquarters for a scheduled meeting, only to be immediately interrupted by Wolf, a fellow priest, who is already drinking due to the overwhelming stress caused by the monsters in his region. Just then, Elton, the archbishop, joins them to caution Wolf about his drinking habit, but this just pisses Wolf off. In frustration, he lashes out at him, angrily demanding that they switch jurisdictions so Elton can see whether he would not also turn into a drunkard under the same pressure. Moments later, the three settle with Cardinal Miller, their headquarters subhead, to give reports on their regions. As this is going on, Annette's replacement, Arya, joins the meeting and apologizes for her tardiness. She then starts to talk about issues in her region, but she keeps forgetting the important parts, which makes Isha wonder if a bolt has come loose in her head. After she is done, the others take turns reporting on their respective regions, each describing the growing instability in their territories. When it gets to Isha's turn, she talks about the ruckus Suzuki caused in her region. Hearing this, Miller points out that he actually summoned them to specifically discuss people from the other world. Since the Otherworlders have already defeated the Dark Lord, Miller informs them that the Pope has decided to seal the magic circles connecting their world to theirs and cease summoning them for help. The others are happy about this news since they are not their biggest fans to start with, until Miller reveals that the 7 heroes who defeated the Dark Lord have already claimed the Dark Lord's territory and declared themselves its new rulers. In light of this, the 7 people send a letter to the Pope to prepare his mind that they plan to turn their whole world into their utopia, which raises serious concerns among the officials. Miller then suggests they declare war on them and not forget Waldelia, the daughter of the Dark Lord, who suddenly disappeared from his castle after the attack. They then begin to discuss strategies on how to go about it, carefully weighing their options and trying to figure out the safest approach for the journey ahead. Isha suddenly remembers the stunt Dazai pulled during their fight with Suzuki. She immediately informs them about how the fight went down and also suggests they use Dazai's gift to their own advantage. Just then, the Pope suddenly makes his presence known, thereby interrupting the discussion, and he calmly asks Isha for more details regarding Dazai. In the meantime, Annette and the gang stop at the next available town they find, and as they wonder where they can find an inn, a mysterious youngster named Nir suddenly interrupts them and gives them directions. Realizing that they are travelers, Nir offers to give them some information that will help their journey. He then starts by telling them about a hero's dispatch service he knows that accompanies travelers to protect them during the course of their journey, describing it as a reliable system for survival in dangerous regions. Tama is, however, not happy that such service is run by people from the other world, but Nir tries to convince them to pay him, promising to find them a competent hero who will accompany them. Immediately, Annette hands him some cash, and even though Tama feels her decision is ridiculous, she maintains that she is doing it to guarantee Dazai's safety. To calm their nerves, Nir promises to get them someone capable of protecting what he assumes is Dazai's corpse. Dazai quickly opens the coffin to let Nir know that he is not dead yet, which makes Nir almost pee his pants. He then runs off, promising to bring someone back for them. However, when night comes, the 3 of them patiently wait for Nir at the inn, only for them to discover from the innkeeper that Nir is actually a scammer. Annette starts having a panic attack from hearing this information, and after regaining herself, she and the others learn about Nir from the innkeeper. Apparently, Nir is an orphan who makes a living by fooling visitors who come to the town. The innkeeper also feels that the heroes Nir always fondly talks about do not exist because if they did, they should have saved Nir from his misfortune. Meanwhile, Nir is currently checking out the sword his father left him, only for him to get abducted by some strange guys. Shortly after, the strange guys tie him up and begin to go through the cash he has saved up. He wonders what the guys are planning to do to him and begins to brag about how his friends from the other world are going to save him. The strange guys then let him know that they are actually from the other world, which leaves him scared. Turns out the guys have received news of his usual scams and want to punish him for that. As one of the guys draws his glowing bow to end him, he becomes devastated that the heroes he believed in are just bullies and low-budget thieves. Just as the guy is about to shoot him, Dazai suddenly arrives and causes the attacker to accidentally shoot one of his own accomplices instead. After that, Dazai expresses his disappointment in the guys, while one of the guys with a questionable glasses choice quickly analyzes Dazai and sees that he is also from their world. He also notices that he is a poisoned, weak fool and wonders if he is getting his courage to stop them from taking sketchy drugs. Thinking that they have the upper hand, the group proceeds to attack him, but Dazai simply moves closer to them, clearly unbothered since he is willing to die anyway. His nonchalant behavior terrifies the men, causing them to flee like scaredy cats while convinced that he is completely insane. After they leave, Nair asks Dazai if he is a hero, but Dazai just stares at him and confirms that he is just a youngster who is not ready to become an adult yet. The following morning, Dazai, Annette, and Tama begin their journey to Tama's hometown, only to once again be interrupted by Nir. Tama immediately lashes out at him for being a scamming little thief, but Nir tells her to chill because he has decided to join their group. A few hours later, they get to Tama's hometown and see that there is an inspection checkpoint. Tama confidently tells them not to fret because she is popular around the area, but when the soldiers finally notice them, their reaction is completely different, as they immediately detain them and place them under arrest without hesitation. Inside the prison, Annette wails uncontrollably while Nir wonders if they were arrested because of Tama, since she is not currently with them. As Nir continues to think, Dazai suddenly asks about how people are executed in their world. Nir, however, ignores his question and begins to pick the prison cell's lock to give them an easy escape. After he is done, Dazai questions why he is trying so hard to escape, but this just pisses him off because he was expecting to be praised. Nir's loud voice then attracts the guards to them, and they immediately tie them up for trying to escape, while Dazai casually asks one of the guards if it means that they are going to be executed. Shortly after, they kneel in front of the king, and the kingdom's minister, a man with more hair than face, named Briard, orders their immediate execution. Surprised, Annette asks for their offense, and Siberian, the king, chimes in to inform them that they abducted the kingdom's princess. Still, they don't understand what Siberian is talking about, and just then, Tama walks in dressed as a princess to inform Siberian that she was not abducted. This leaves the three of them in complete shock, but Tama just continues to tell Siberian about how she left on her own to level up her martial skill and just met them on the way by coincidence, so they should be released. Siberian then lets Tama know that he is only going to release them under the condition that Tama does not do anything foolish again and acts like a princess. Hearing this, she sadly stares at the three of them one last time before agreeing to her father's wishes, after which she takes her leave. After their release, they visit the kingdom's restaurant to celebrate their freedom, but Dazai swallows pills instead of eating, completely devastated that the execution attempt failed. Annette and Nir also express their disbelief in Tama's real identity, especially since Annette has been rude to her multiple times. Fawn, one of the restaurant attendants, realizes that they are talking about Tama and decides to join in the conversation. Apparently, she used to be Tama's lady-in-waiting, and she learns about their situation with Tama. Curious about Tama's situation, Dazai asks Fawn about her relationship with Siberian. Annette and Nir, however, caution him to be careful since she is a princess, but Dazai does not care about that, so Fawn then proceeds to explain what she knows. Meanwhile, Tama is stuck in her room, reminiscing on the day's events, and is amused by how Dazai remained unfazed after learning that she is a princess. While at it, she suddenly sees a strange guy named Kaibara from afar, and just then, Kaibara crashes into the palace and sits on Siberian's throne. He then introduces himself to an angry Siberian as one of the heroes who clipped the Dark Lord and is now on a mission to consume the entire nation. Some of Siberian's guards immediately get into an offensive position to attack him, but he summons his giant teeth to eat them up. After that, he informs Siberian that he really has no interest in consuming his guards, and he is craving for a chick's flesh instead. Hearing this annoys Siberian, and he proceeds to attack him, thereby forcing the two into an intense fight. As they continue to fight, Tama suddenly calls out to Siberian, and this impresses Kaibara because she perfectly fits into his preferred taste. Tama also realizes that he is the strange guy she saw on the roof earlier and decides to join in the fight, but Siberian immediately stops her and lets her know she can never replace her twin brother. Back at the restaurant, Fawn tells Dazai and the others that Tama used to have a twin brother who was supposed to inherit the throne. Then, a decade ago, Tama's twin brother and mother died in an accident. This left Siberian depressed for a long time, and it saddened Tama, so she instructed Fawn to cut her hair because she wanted to take her twin brother's place and put Siberian's mind at ease. While Fawn continues her story, Tama and Siberian continue to argue about her desire to join in the fight. Still, Tama refuses and proceeds to attack Kaibara, which makes Kaibara summon his giant teeth in response. Tama is caught off guard by the giant teeth, forcing Siberian to shove her aside before losing his arm in the process. Kaibara then chews the arm satisfactorily, which pisses Tama off, and she rushes towards him. But Briard quickly escapes with her midway before she knocks on the gate to the afterlife. Shortly after, Briard drops an unconscious Tama in front of Dazai and the others who are just exiting the restaurant. Briard then informs them of the current ruckus going on at the castle, only for them and the other citizens to be interrupted by Kaibara. Kaibara introduces himself as their new king with a captured Siberian by his side. He also announces that he plans to feast on the citizens, but when one brave guy steps forward to challenge him to a duel, Kaibara instantly feeds him to his giant teeth. Seeing this immediately scares the people, and they run for their lives, but monsters have already been stationed at strategic places to stop them from escaping. A few hours later, Tama regains consciousness and finds Fawn, Annette, Nir, and the other guys already waiting for her. Briard then informs her that Kaibara has taken over the royal capital, and he is planning to turn the citizens into a 3-course meal. Hearing this pisses her off, and she rushes out to deal with him, but Briard stops her while the others let her know that Kaibara is actually very powerful. Even at that, she still feels the need to protect the kingdom, so Annette advises her to take a chill pill because she is the only surviving heir to her father's throne, and if she accidentally loses her life, it will deeply hurt the people of the kingdom. Annette also assures her that they have a secret weapon for defeating people from the other world, and she heads out with Dazai and a scared Nir. Getting to the castle, Kaibara's guards refuse to allow them in and promise to eliminate them instead, so Dazai calmly explains that they came specifically to be eaten by Kaibara. Hearing this leaves the guards confused, but an agitated Dazai orders them to relay his message quickly, and they end up getting thrown into the prison for the second time. Inside the prison, Dazai pulls out a pin and tells Nir to get to work. When Tama was younger, Siberian always focused on training her twin brother on how to fight since he is in line to be the next king. Although Tama always wanted to learn alongside him, Siberian refused to train her simply because she is a lady, so whenever her mother helped with her hair, she would always talk about how much she disliked Siberian. However, her mother understood her frustrations and always said something to calm her nerves. Now that she has returned to face Kaibara against Siberian's wishes, she carries all those suppressed feelings with her and vows to finish off Kaibara with her own hands, determined to prove her worth. As she stands before him, Kaibara quickly distracts her and blasts her away with a lightning spell that sends her crashing in the opposite direction. This surprises her because the spell actually belongs to Siberian, and Kaibara reveals that he can use the skills of anyone he devours, which also means that he is going to turn her into chopped meat with her own father's skill. Meanwhile, Dazai, Nier, and Annette finally sneak out of the prison to snoop around the castle, and they find themselves in Tama's mother's room. Nier reminds Dazai that they are supposed to defeat Kaibara, but Dazai just calmly tells him to open the locked drawer in the room. He complies, and they find a neat diary inside. Tama, however, begins to remember fragments of her past, especially the time she would always ask her twin brother why he trained so hard when he did not even like fighting. She eventually learned that he trained because he wanted to be strong like their father, so he could protect their family and the entire nation. That memory reignites something in her, boosting her bruised ego and determination to continue the fight despite her injuries. While Kaibara just laughs at her foolishness, her determination reminds Kaibara of his old life, where he spent every day drowning in boredom despite being born into wealth and privilege. Then one day, he stabbed one of his maids to feel alive, but his parents just compensated the maid, which left him annoyed. Though people called him privileged, he felt like the most miserable person in the world until the truck hit him. Now in his current world, he believes he can finally feel alive by eating as many people as he wants, and he summons his giant teeth to consume Tama. Dazai suddenly steps in front of Tama to block the attack and shades Kaibara for giving a sleep-inducing story. Kaibara, irritated, then summons his teeth again to swallow Dazai instead, but to his shock, the teeth refuse to comply with his command. The sight completely unsettles Kaibara, forcing him to question Dazai's identity and what makes him different from everyone else he has consumed. Isha quickly answers for Dazai and lets Kaibara know that he can banish his kind from the current world. Kaibara does not believe her, and she orders Dazai to get to work by writing Kaibara's story, only to get curved by Dazai. Turns out Dazai feels Kaibara's story isn't worth writing about, and this comment annoys Kaibara, so he summons Siberian's lightning spell to destroy the whole castle immediately. Seeing everyone injured leaves Tama heartbroken, and she blames herself for everything that is happening, feeling as though she has failed everyone around her. Dazai then calmly taps her and hands her the story he wrote about her. She opens the pages, which suddenly start transforming into a glowing magic circle. He then starts to summarize the story while she just listens intently. As he continues the story, Tama suddenly remembers when her mother told her to live life on her own terms instead of worrying about her father's expectations. Now she has to choose between living the ideal princess life her father wants for her or living as an ideal prince in place of her twin brother. Dazai advises her that neither of those paths truly belongs to her, and the crest of the divine beast suddenly glows from her body. Seeing this reminds Siberian of the day Tama first awakened the crest, a memory he had kept hidden. He recalls how she stopped her twin brother from informing him, unaware that he had been listening in on their conversation the entire time. Now, overwhelmed with regret, he realizes that he may have misunderstood her intentions all along and silently hopes she can forgive him for trying to protect her in the wrong way. Soon after, Kaibara moves towards her to satisfy his cravings once again, but she rushes towards him and gives him a powerful kick in the head. Annoyed, he retaliates immediately, but Tama activates a technique fueled by her resolve, resulting in Kaibara's ultimate defeat. After the fight, she collapses into Siberian's arm, while Isha rushes over to heal her wounds. Dazai then hands Siberian his wife's diary, causing Siberian to question whether Dazai understands the concept of privacy. Dazai just asks if he is going to sentence him to death again. Instead, he expresses his gratitude for how Dazai saved and protected his daughter during the battle. Moments later, Kaibara unexpectedly transforms into a zombie due to the power he gained from eating the flesh of the Dark Lord when he eliminated him, causing his body to mutate with lingering cursed energy. As a result, he feels an intense surge of unstable power from within. While Delia suddenly appears and slices his head off without warning, but even after losing his head, Kaibara continues speaking, praising the taste of the Dark Lord's flesh and refusing to die quietly. Annoyed by his persistence, she casts a powerful spell to finally shut him up forever, erasing his remaining disgusting presence. After that, Dazai confirms that Kaibara was the one who eliminated her father and asks if she feels better now that she has gotten her revenge. She, however, just escapes on her dragon, after promising to take him out the next time she finds him. As he watches her leave, he wishes to get to write her story one day. The following morning, Tama sits in her room when Siberian suddenly interrupts her quiet time. Instead of scolding her, he encourages her to follow her friends on their travels, under the condition that she returns when she is done with the journey. Hearing this pleases her, and she immediately climbs out of her window and thanks her father for the chance, promising to return as a powerful martial artist before running off. In the meantime, Dazai and the others are already leaving the kingdom, believing she is going to stay behind, so when she eventually catches up with them, they become excited. 3 days later, the group stops in front of the largest tree in the nation to admire it. Isha then tells Dazai about how the tree protects everyone who visits it. She also informs him about a town by the tree's foot that consists of inhabitants with simple lives and suggests they stop there to pray for safe travels. Getting to the town, they are surprised to see that the town now owns a casino. They also notice some of the inhabitants stabbing each other crazily, like they are high on cheap weeds, and Dazai talks about how the town must have embraced a new reality, only to realize that his pills have finished. Annette and Tama suggest they go speak to the mayor. Getting to the mayor, they waste no time in asking about what happened to the town, and the mayor explains. Turns out that some other worlders visited the town months ago to start living there, and they ended up building a casino that has attracted all kinds of barbarous other worlders to the town. The mayor then shows them one of the sacred tree's dried leaves and lets them know the tree has grown weaker ever since the other worlders took over the town. He then asks if they are willing to restore the town to its original state, but Dazai just wants to know where he can get more pills. The others start to yell at him for being inconsiderate, but a guy with a face card that never declines named Yamada suddenly interrupts them and declares he will save the tree. Though he is an otherworlder, Yamada claims he only wants peace. On that note, he asks for the mayor's permission to get to work, and the others become so impressed by his nature that they decide to help him save the town. A few hours later, Dazai aimlessly wanders across the town, frustrated by how healthy he still feels, until he finds a cave and goes to check it out. Inside the cave, he is surprised to see that it is a hidden smoking den filled with useless guys like himself and becomes impressed. He then begs for a smoke, but a hot chick named Eshe suddenly interrupts him and offers to take him to a place where he can have more fun. Shortly after, she takes him to a bar where he admits that he plans to drink himself to death. Intrigued by his worldview, Eske performs a dance for him, leaving him strangely captivated. In the meantime, Annette crashes out at their lodge because she can't find Dazai, so when he returns, she becomes excited, only to see that he returned with Eshe. To make matters worse, Dazai is completely drunk, which sends Annette's thoughts spiraling. After Eshe takes her leave, the mayor talks about how Eshe is popularly known as the witch of the town. Apparently, when the other worlders began building their casino in the town, Eshe decided to act sneaky by gaining the favor of the other worlders so that she could open a bar next to them. Now she makes a huge fortune selling her liquor and dancing to the other worlders, which makes the townspeople start to call her a traitorous witch. Hearing this, Yamada decides that Eske must also answer for her actions. The following morning, Annette rushes after Dazai to inform him that the battle with the other worlders is starting soon. Dazai replies that he does not remember accepting such a job and wishes her luck as he continues his journey to Eske's bar. Still, Annette tries to stop him, but Yamada tells her not to bother because he believes Dazai has been charmed by Eshe. Getting to the bar, Dazai and Eshe try to catch up, and Eshe lets her know that he is not supposed to hang out with her because people call her a witch. Dazai lets her know that he does not really care about public opinion. Esche then advises him to pray to the spirit of the largest tree. Maybe it will ease his pain a little. But Dazai just replies that she needs the prayer more than him because he could tell that sadness filled her dancing. Some douchebags from the casino soon interrupt their conversation to order drinks. As they wait for their order, they start to discuss strategies on how to turn the townspeople into customers at their casino. Esche drops their order soon after and informs them that part of their agreement was that only otherworlders would be allowed inside the casino, but the guys beg to differ. Esche then reminds them that she paid them a huge amount of money in exchange for not touching the townspeople, but the guys refuse to hear her out and throw her in the opposite direction. Dazai looks at her and calls her an angel, only for an explosion to interrupt their moment. Turns out Yamada and the others just finished demolishing the casino, and Yamada declares that every other worlder in town, including Esche, will be driven out. Just then, Dazai moves closer to Yamada to talk it out, but Yamada has no interest in speaking to a disgrace like him, so he leaves him alone. Yamada then quickly overwhelms the other worlders, forcing the survivors to flee in terror. After they leave, Esche thanks Yamada for saving the town, which makes Yamada think she has come to her senses and urges her to mend her ways. At that moment, the crowd begins to jubilate that their town is finally free, until they remember Esche is still with them and glare at her with pure hatred. Yamada tries to appease the angry crowd on her behalf, but they refuse to hear him out. Dazai then steps forward to inform the crowd about how Esche actually protected the town and talks about how she kept the other worlders in check. Still, they don't believe his story, so Esche apologizes for the trouble caused and takes her leave. After she leaves, the mayor informs Yamada that the other worlders were making a fortune from selling the leaves of the tree, and since they've been driven out, he wouldn't mind the townspeople turning it into a personal business, so he wants Yamada to serve as the town's protector to scare other worlders off. Hearing this disappoints Yamada, who realizes that the townspeople are just as greedy as the other worlders. Soon after, Dazai and the others continue their journey, only for them to witness the large tree drying up. Dazai also sees Esche and realizes that she is the tree's spirit. She thanks him for understanding her and transforms into a light that ends up filling his container with his pills. The following week, the group arrives at the desert while searching for the nearest temple. Nir then lets them know that he is from the desert and starts to lecture them on how it is safer to travel in the day instead of at night. As he continues his lecture, some crazy-looking guys suddenly interrupt their conversation, which leaves them extremely shocked. Their boss, a guy named Tori with full hair that blocks his senses, introduces the crew as the huntsmen and orders they pay a fine for trespassing on the desert. Nir quickly figures from his accent that the crew are otherworlders, while Annette and Tama proceed to attack them. As the two attack some of the crew members, Tori figures they are dealing with crazy chicks that belong in the boxing ring, so he focuses his attention on little Nir, like the coward that he is. Nir is at the verge of peeing his pants as he struggles to remove his sword, and Toru starts to make fun of him. Dazai then reaches out to Toru and tells him to eliminate him instead, so Toru complies and extends his scorpion to suck life out of Dazai. Unfortunately, the scorpion dries up within seconds because of Dazai's poison, and Toru angrily rushes towards Dazai to get revenge for his pet. The sound of a wolf suddenly interrupts him, and he escapes with the rest of his gang, promising to return for revenge. After they leave, Nir starts to feel down, but Tama cheers him up and assures him that he will handle the next douchebag they encounter. Nir then apologizes to Dazai for being a coward, but Dazai just advises him to take it one step at a time. Annette also calls on Nir to lead them out of the desert since he is familiar with the area. Shortly after, they arrive at a building that belongs to an orphanage, and the youngsters rush out in their numbers to welcome Nir, which makes the others realize that it is where Nir grew up. Inside the orphanage, Nir and the other youngsters happily devour Kathy, the orphanage mistress's food, while Dazai comments on how tasteless the food is. The youngsters then start to pester Nir for news on his travels because they believe he is now a warrior, and Nir starts to cook up lies. He talks about how he is a member of a hero's party with Dazai being the hero, but Dazai quickly corrects that he is just an author. After the meal and the youngsters have gone to sleep, Nir and the others hear the sound of the wolf once again, and Kathy informs them that the sound is from a starving wolf who has been roaming the area for a while now. Due to this, Kathy takes extra precautions with locking the doors at night and warns them not to go out at night, but Dazai is currently outside chilling. A few hours later, Nir suddenly notices a strange figure by the window, so he grabs his sword and heads out to be a hero. As he waits for the figure to pass by, he suddenly bumps into a mysterious man named Saito carrying a basket of fruits. He then figures that Saito is the anonymous person who has been supplying the orphanage with food, and he learns that he does it because he secretly enjoys watching the youngsters enjoy their food from afar. They then settle down to talk, and Nir opens up to him about how he lost his parents when he was young and had to grow up in the orphanage. He also talks about his father's sword and how he is traveling a lot to one day become worthy enough to use the sword so that he can also make his orphanage proud. Hearing this moves Saito deeply, and he informs him that his parents would be proud of him. The two continue to talk until early in the morning when Saito excuses himself because he feels he is not worthy enough to face the youngsters. Nir then decides to hang out with Saito instead, and together they get more food for the youngsters. Getting home later in the evening, Nir falls into a deep sleep, which makes the others wonder what he had been up to. Just then, Kathy interrupts them with terrible news that one of the youngsters has been abducted. They then realize that it is Toru and his fellow jobless guy's handiwork, and when they proceed to fight him, Nir struggles to draw his sword once again. Saito quickly drags him away, and on getting to safety, he starts to cry bitterly for being a coward. Seeing him like this makes Saito start to get flashbacks of his past life, so he tells Nir not to worry and leave the rest to him. Apparently, Saito is an otherworlder who has the power to transform into a werewolf. As he completes his transformation, he starts to angrily chase after Toru, and while at it, Dazai starts to take notes as if he needs them to make a blog post. Nir also sees this, and it suddenly makes him feel confident, so he finally draws his sword to block the angry werewolf from eliminating Toru. Nir then pleads with him not to do something he will regret, but the wolf is too blinded by rage to listen, so when he rushes at him, Nir drops his sword to surrender. Seeing this makes the wolf finally regain himself and transform back into Saito. After the whole incident, Saito opens up about his past life. Apparently, he also lost his parents at an early age, and it was extremely hard for him. Then one day, a guy reached out to him and started treating him like his big brother, but when the guy eventually faced troubles, he was unable to help him out. And on the way back, he got hit by the truck. Now that he is in another world, he still feels remorseful about the incident and blames it on his inability to walk. Dazai, however, faults his story and thinks he is just trying to look for sympathy. Nir quickly defends Saito by claiming he understands how he feels because he also goes numb when people need his help. Saito then thanks him for siding with him and calls him a valiant warrior for risking his life to stop him. At that moment, Dazai opens his pages to form a magic story around Saito and summarize his story. After he is done, the youngsters quickly thank Saito for giving them free food, and hearing this gladdens his heart before he eventually vanishes back to his former world. The following week, Isha and Wolf assist the desert dwarves in battling an army of lizardmen led by another otherworlder, as the conflict between factions continues to escalate across the region. While at it, Isha casts a powerful spell to create a massive tornado that sweeps across the battlefield, eventually taking out a large portion of the lizardmen and shifting the momentum of the fight. With the remaining lizardmen retreating, Wolf briefly believes they finally have the upper hand and that the worst is over. However, that confidence quickly disappears when both he and Isha realize that Dazai is currently trapped inside the very tornado he just created. A few hours later, Doran, the king of the dwarves, and Wolf celebrate alongside Doran's soldiers, marking what they believe to be a victory in the attack. As the celebration continues, Tama and Nir stuff themselves with food enough to feed a nation, while Isha starts to brief Annette on the challenges they faced in defeating the lizardmen. The conversation then shifts to how Dazai managed to survive the tornado incident, and just then, Dazai interrupts them and starts to complain about how he lost his coffin in the crazy attack. Wolf also joins their discussion shortly after, and Mellows suddenly notices Femelos, which happens to be Wolf's pet. Mellows immediately becomes completely smitten by Femelos while Wolf checks on Dazai to see how he is doing, and hopes he overlooks the whole incident since they are at war. Isha then explains that the nation is currently at war with one of the 7 otherworlders that defeated the Dark Lord, and Tama uses the opportunity to brag about how she already defeated one of them in her hometown. Wolf tries to diminish her work, claiming the guy was probably weak and not worth bragging about, but this only pisses Tama off, and she warns Wolf not to underestimate her and her squad's ability. To prove her point, she brags about Dazai's skills, but Wolf dismisses the idea entirely, claiming that his own magic is superior and more reliable in battle. Wolf then takes his leave, and the others start to wonder why he had to act like a jerk. Hearing their sentiment, Isha quickly lets them know that, despite being a foolish drunkard, Wolf is actually one of the strongest wizards in their world. A few minutes later, Dazai walks with Mello to their inn, where they are staying, and he figures that Mellows has a crush on Femelos, so he promises him that they will look for Femelos together. As they continue to walk, he cannot help but imagine that they are both foolish men wandering the world to look for the chicks they are in love with. They then unexpectedly run into Wolf once again and realize that all the chicks in town want a taste of his sausage, and Dazai shades Mello for being the complete opposite of him. Curiosity gets the better of them, and they begin following Wolf discreetly like thieves in the night, only to discover him visiting an apartment belonging to someone who refuses to let him inside. Observing this awkward situation, Dazai quickly concludes that Wolf may actually be down bad for a chick who completely ignores his existence. The following morning, Doran, Isha, and the others receive an urgent message about the lizardmen attacking some areas. Tama immediately volunteers to help defend the region, but Doran refuses her request, stating that they are guests and should not be sent into battle under his protection. Instead, Doran moves out with his soldiers to confront the lizardmen once again. Wolf and Isha also help out in the battle until they notice a giant dragon heading in their direction. Instead of fire, the dragon begins firing destructive laser-like beams across the battlefield, causing widespread panic and destruction. Isha quickly recognizes the creature as the Dark Lord's former pet from when he was still alive. Wolf then attempts to cast a spell to take the dragon down as it flies in his direction, only to see Yuriko, a chick he used to be familiar with, controlling the dragon. Yuriko calls out to Wolf, referring to him as master, before taking him away with her while simultaneously rendering Isha immobile during the chaos. After the incident, the group holds an urgent meeting to discuss what went down, and Isha suggests that Yuriko probably took Wolf to the nearest temple. As they continue to discuss, Femelos appears to be visibly distressed over the disappearance of her precious owner, thereby prompting Mellows and Dazai to head to the apartment where they tracked Wolf the previous day in order to make some findings that can help the case. However, when they arrive, and the apartment's door opens, they are shocked to see an old woman named Hikari on the other side of the door. In the meantime, Isha continues analyzing the situation, suggesting that Yuriko may have once been Wolf's student, which would explain why she called him master. She then urgently orders Doran to send his soldiers after Yuriko, but Doran explains that he has no troops left to spare due to ongoing battles. Hearing this, Tama suggests they leave the work to her and her squad. They then begin to wonder where Dazai is, only for him to return with Hikari soon after. The following morning, the group prepares to set out once again, but they are unsure how they will reach their destination efficiently. Right on cue, Toru suddenly arrives and starts to talk about how he is there to mend his ways because Nier saved his life. To do that, he brags about how he now helps the orphanage and also runs a low-budget Uber-style transport service. He then uses his skill to transform a poor tiger just passing by into a bus that looks like it is on its way to the Amazon rainforest. He proudly tells them to hop in, but when it gets to Dazai's turn to enter, he refuses to let him in because he is still angry that he eliminated his precious scorpion during their last attack. After that, he begins the journey, completely ignoring the others who start to complain bitterly about how he left their precious Dazai behind. With no means of getting there, Dazai briefly contemplates giving up and calling it a day, seeing no reason to chase after the rest of them. But Hikari pleads with him because she wants to meet with Wolf. A few hours later, the group, excluding Dazai, arrives at the temple where Wolf is being held captive. Inside the temple, they see Wolf's current state and angrily question what Yuriko truly wants. Yuriko then introduces herself as the Angel of Greed and informs them not to interrupt her affair with Wolf. To show she means business, she summons multiple skeletons to attack them and keep them busy. Wolf pleads with her to stop what she's doing, but she refuses to listen to him. The group continues to fight the skeletons, but the undead continue to revive no matter how many times they are defeated. One of the skeletons then uses the chaos to push Isha closer to Yuriko, and Isha quickly takes the opportunity to ask her about her relationship with Wolf, hoping to understand the source of her obsession. Hearing this makes Yuriko remember the time when she was still struggling with casting spells as Wolf's student. Though Wolf once advised her to embrace her weaknesses because all people from the other world didn't need to challenge the Dark Lord, she refused to accept that mindset, believing that the world itself demanded the Dark Lord's defeat. Despite this, Wolf praised her hardworking spirit and assured her that her abilities would eventually grow, showing genuine belief in her potential. At the time, Wolf was a good teacher to her, and she genuinely enjoyed his presence and guidance. However, everything changed when Hikari, the last person she wanted to see, suddenly appeared, and Wolf immediately shifted his attention toward her. Feeling abandoned and replaced, Yuriko devoted herself to becoming stronger in hopes of earning Wolf's attention again. Unfortunately, Wolf's focus on the Hikari did not change, and he even believed Hikari was the hero sent to defeat the Dark Lord. Realizing this awakened her darker impulses, and in a moment of rage and despair, she ended Hikari's life before leaving Wolf's temple for good. Back in the present, Yuriko dismisses the skeletons and summons her most powerful spell to end the group once and for all. Right on cue, Dazai breaks into the temple with an upgraded coffin and orders Mellows to bring Hikari soon after. Seeing Hikari shocks Yuriko because Hikari is actually her younger sister. Dazai then lets Yuriko know that he just finished writing Hikari's story and asks her to start spilling so he can document hers, too. To make himself clear to Yuriko, he introduces himself as a writer and starts to talk about Hikari's story. Apparently, Yuriko always cared for Hikari since she was a youngster because of Hikari's illness. Hikari also chimes in to confirm the statement by talking about how Yuriko even missed her school's graduation just to stay by her side. Hearing this just pisses Yuriko off, and she summons her skeletons to eliminate Dazai. Dazai, however, is oddly pleased by this reaction, but the others quickly attack the skeletons to protect him from the incoming attack. After that, Dazai continues to pester Yuriko to give him her story, and when Hikari calls out to her to cooperate, she basically tells her to shut up and reveals that she always disliked her because she stole her youth from her. According to Yuriko, she had been excited to join the current world because it felt like a breath of fresh air after taking care of Hikari all her life. But when Hikari suddenly showed up as the new chick that stole Wolf's attention, she became furious and vowed never to let her get in her way again. Seeing that Yuriko is obviously consumed by anger, Dazai still moves closer to her to ask more questions about her story. Enraged, Yuriko swings her spear at him, but Wolf quickly pushes Dazai out of the way and takes the hit instead, thereby sacrificing himself in the process. The impact causes part of his body to age unnaturally, but he ignores the damage and instead begins apologizing to Yuriko, trying to take responsibility for everything. Dazai quickly stops him before he makes the whole situation about himself and continues to question Yuriko about what she really wants. Yuriko sends her skeletons to attack him in response, and even though he got injured from the attack, he continues to pester her with questions, as if he is actually going to get paid for all the stress. Yuriko then surrenders and opens up to him. Apparently, there was a time Yuriko informed her father about her school graduation commencing soon, but her father ignored her, as if she meant nothing to him, and played with Hikari instead. When he eventually decided to leave for work, he just told Yuriko to look after her sister, which made her really angry. As she looked through the window and saw a student with her father, it made her sad, and she decided to head to school herself since Hikari was fast asleep. By the time she returned home later in the night, Hikari's condition had grown worse, and her father slapped her for neglecting Hikari. He then yelled at her for almost letting her sister die under her watch, and she sadly left the house, only to get hit on the road by a truck. When she eventually got the chance to reunite with her sister in the afterlife, she just tried to eliminate her instead. Now, she finally admits that she does not feel good about how she went through the whole situation. Hearing this, Dazai concludes that Yuriko simply wants to be seen and acknowledged, and he calmly points out to her that everyone in the world shares that same desire in one way or another. Hikari then gently hugs Yuriko and apologizes for making her go through everything alone, expressing regret for the pain she caused without realizing it. Dazai then lets her know that Hikari got summoned to the current world because she missed her every single day after she died in their other world, and that one day, while walking along the road, she was also struck by a truck and brought here as well. Hearing this also makes Wolf come to a painful realization that he failed as a teacher, because when Hikari told him to train her daily so she could defeat the Dark Lord, since she wanted to let Yuriko live freely, he should have informed Yuriko about it. Dazai then summons the magic circle, and in the process, everything that needs healing around the area becomes healthy. With the magic circle activation in full effect, Yuriko takes the time to apologize to everyone for the trouble caused, and afterward, she returns to her former world with Hikari by her side, thereby bringing closure to the crazy conflict. Back at the church headquarters, the Pope receives intel on the latest development on the 7 other worlders disrupting the peace of the nation. Hearing about Dazai's contribution to their defeat leaves the Pope convinced that Dazai is their savior. In the meantime, Nier calls out to Dazai to let them return to the castle, but Dazai senses they are about to receive another August visitor and refuses to move. Right on cue, Sengoku, another member of the 7 other worlders, crashes into the temple and challenges them to a fight. Wolf then decides to play hero, following the humiliation he suffered earlier, and casts a powerful spell on Sengoku, only for Sengoku to dust it because his armor can actually resist magic. Toru also tries to attack Sengoku, only to get thrown in the opposite direction. Tama charges at him next with her ultimate technique, but this does not work either. Sengoku then decides playtime is over and proceeds to attack Tama with a sword. Nier quickly steps in to block the attack with his own sword, and he is shocked to see Sengoku's sword break into pieces. Sengoku praises his skill and takes his leave, clearly hurt that a youngster broke his sword. Nier, however, is still in disbelief that he saved them, and the others rush to him to praise him. Getting back to the castle, Doran declares another drinking fest for the victory. As the celebration continues, Dazai starts to coach Mello on how to get cracking with Femelos. When he eventually goes to meet Femelos, she turns down his request immediately. On the way back, Dazai advises Mello not to feel broken from all that went down because it is normal for guys to get rejected by chicks they like if the chicks are not feeling them. Just then, Sachan suddenly walks past him, and he immediately feels that she is the one. He quickly calls out to her, and as she replies to him, he is extremely shocked to see that she actually made it to the current world. Excited that she looks well, he suggests they take themselves out. Sachan, however, refuses, stating that he has changed from the last time she saw him and he now seems more lively. Dazai tries to explain that he has not changed, and all he has been up to is wandering the nation like a sewer rat, only for him to be interrupted by Tama and the others, who are there because Mello summoned them. Seeing this confirms Sachan's points, and she wishes him a good life because she can't be with him anymore. Still, Dazai calls out to her, and this is how the others realize that he has been talking to Sachan. The following morning, the group visits Rodos, a blacksmith, to yap about how good his inventions are. They then call out to Dazai to thank him for his upgraded coffin, but Dazai is still heartbroken from his last night's conversation with Sachan, as he continues to display actions of a guy that can't handle rejection. Nier shows Rodos his sword and requests that he take a look at it since it shattered Sengoku's sword with ease. After checking it out, Rodos lets him know it is too great for him, but he can one day be a warrior who is worthy of the sword. Dazai soon interrupts their discussion to drive his upgraded coffin out of the workshop because he plans to die in it. Back at the Dark Lord's castle, Sachan returns to join the remaining members of the Otherworlders who are still alive. They then settle for a meeting, and when she gets asked about her reunion with Dazai, she replies that he indeed has the power to change the current world, and she is proud of that. A few hours later, the group continues to look for Dazai till they reach a village where they meet a guy with eyes capable of blocking the sun, suddenly yapping about how capable his village's hero is. He then shows them a statue of the hero, which looks like it is being chased by the dragon statue behind it. He quickly clears up the misunderstanding by explaining how a gloomy guy suddenly drove into their village and spun the statue around. The group immediately knows he is referring to Dazai, so they proceed to go look for him. The guy quickly stops them and informs them that Dazai has already entered the village shrine, which leads to a forbidden land where Oberis, the fairy queen, lives. This worries the group, but the guy assures them no one can enter the land without passing the trials. Unknown to them, Dazai passes through all the trials without even having to try, but the guy just tells them to wait for Dazai to return. In the meantime, Dazai arrives at the Forbidden Land only to land directly on the Fairy Queen's huge mommy milkers. Dazai immediately thinks he has died and gone to paradise, but Salulu and Ilulu, the fairy twins of the land, quickly inform him that he just entered a forbidden land. He then engages the Oberus, the Fairy Queen, in a sad conversation on how he just lost his soulmate, and because of that, he does not really care about stuff anymore. Oberus already knows about Dazai from her discussion with Eshi, and she wonders why she chose a walking time bomb to gain entry into her land. She then asks about the blessing Eske bestowed on him, only to discover that it is just an endless supply of pills. Though she finds his behavior is weird, she does not believe him being sent to her land is a mistake, so she informs him that he will be reunited with his soulmate at the end of his journey and grants him a longer life. He thanks her for her kindness, and she hands him a whistle he can blow on if he encounters any challenge. In the meantime, the group continues to wait for his return, only for him to arrive with his upgraded coffin shortly after. The group immediately checks on him to see if he is okay, But the guy from earlier completely loses it because Dazai demolished his hero's statue during the process of returning. Dazai immediately blows the whistle to avoid stress, which causes Solulu to immediately appear. He then asks if Solulu can fix the statue, but this just pisses Solulu off because it means Dazai now has her on speed dial. Soon after, Dazai and the others continue to walk through the desert. Dazai then stares at the rope on his arm before turning to the group and urging them to let them continue the journey. If you watched this anime recap and made it to the end, let me know in the comments who your favorite member of Dazai's dysfunctional party is. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more recaps like this. Peace.